The storm raged over Central Park, lightning streaking across the sky as rain poured relentlessly. Among the towering trees, a woman's frantic voice cut through the thunder. "Tommy! Tommy, where are you?" Sarah Miller's heart pounded as she searched desperately for her blind 6-year-old son. Just moments ago, they had been sitting on a bench, listening to the birds before the storm rolled in. A single glance away, just long enough to take a call from her employer, and Tommy had vanished, drawn by a sound he later described as sorrowful and strange. "Mommy, I'm scared," his small voice barely carried over the howling wind. Sarah ran toward the sound, slipping on the wet grass. 5 years had passed since she lost her husband, Michael, a brave firefighter who died rescuing a family from a burning building. The thought of losing Tommy too was unbearable. Lightning lit up the park, casting eerie shadows. Tommy had wandered dangerously close to Turtle Pond, its waters swelling with the storm. "Please, someone help!" Sarah screamed, her voice trembling with fear. Then, out of the darkness, a large shape moved swiftly. Panic surged in Sarah's chest. Was it a threat? But another flash of lightning revealed a dog, its fur matted and scarred, yet its movements focused and determined. Before Sarah could react, the dog had reached Tommy, gently gripping his jacket with its teeth and pulling him back from the water. As Sarah reached them, she saw Tommy's small hand rest on the dog's wet fur, a look of wonder on his face, despite his fear. "An angel came, Mommy," he whispered as Sarah pulled him into her arms. "I heard it crying behind the trees, and then it found me." Sarah turned to the dog, locking eyes with the creature that had just saved her son. There was an intelligence there, a wisdom born from hardship, and something else, a quiet, noble strength that reminded her painfully of Michael's courage. Thunder rumbled again, but Tommy didn't flinch. His tiny fingers remained buried in the dog's fur, and Sarah knew in that moment their lives would never be the same. Life had been cruel to Sarah since that tragic day 5 years ago. Michael's death left her alone to raise Tommy, who had been blind from birth due to a rare condition. The weight of single parenthood, medical bills, and constant care pressed down on her. Michael's wealthy family, the Millers, never approved of her, a modest schoolteacher, and after his death, their disdain became hostility. They claimed she was incapable of raising Tommy, suggesting he'd be better off in their care, attending an elite boarding school for the blind. "Think about what's best for him," Richard Miller, her father-in-law, would say, his tone dripping with condescension. "You're being selfish, keeping him in these conditions." Subtle threats of custody turned into legal notices, anonymous complaints to child services, and surprise inspections. But Sarah refused to break. Tommy was her world, and despite the struggles, she fought tirelessly to ensure he had everything he needed. Though the world often underestimated him, Tommy saw beauty in ways others couldn't. He understood the sun not by sight, but by its warmth on his face. He read through Braille, recognized people by their footsteps, and navigated life with remarkable intuition. Yet society wasn't always kind. Parents pulled their children away at the playground, school bullies mocked him, and even adults spoke over him as if he weren't there. But Tommy possessed an extraordinary spirit. His fingers danced across piano keys, playing melodies that moved people to tears. In music, he found a voice beyond words, a way to show the world that blindness didn't define him. Before he became Tommy's guardian, the stray dog had a name: Max. Once, he was one of the NYPD's most decorated rescue dogs, known for finding lost children. But everything changed during a warehouse fire 3 years ago. While guiding trapped workers to safety, a burning beam collapsed. In a split-second decision, Max pushed a rookie officer out of harm's way and took the full impact himself. The injuries left him scarred and unable to return to duty. His handler, Officer James Wilson, wanted to keep him, but Wilson's wife, fearful of the dog's scars and injuries around their newborn, surrendered Max to a shelter without her husband's knowledge. At the shelter, Max's scars frightened potential adopters. Families turned away, seeing only a broken dog, not the hero he once was. When the overcrowded shelter placed him on the euthanasia list, fate intervened. On the stormy night before his scheduled end, Max escaped. For weeks he roamed Central Park, a silent guardian in the shadows. Despite his pain, his instincts remained. He protected lost children, barked to alert authorities of dangers, and even stole food only when he saw someone hungry. Park visitors whispered of a mysterious, scarred dog who appeared in times of need. Then came the night he heard Tommy's cry, and for the first time in years, Max found a purpose again. The morning after the storm, Max appeared outside Sarah and Tommy's apartment. His scarred face drew nervous glances from neighbors, but Tommy recognized him instantly. "Mom, it's my angel from the park!" Tommy exclaimed, reaching out. Max stepped forward, pressing his nose gently into Tommy's hand. A silent understanding passed between them. Two souls who had known struggle, who had been judged by the world, but who had also found each other. Sarah hesitated, thinking of the challenges ahead, but as she looked at Max, she saw something undeniable. This wasn't just a stray. This was a protector, a guardian, a piece of fate woven into their lives. And so, with Tommy beaming and Max resting his head against the boy's lap, Sarah made a decision that would change everything. Max had found a home, and in doing so, he had given them something they never expected: hope. Tommy's tiny fingers traced Max's face with remarkable gentleness, even running over his scars without hesitation. Max never flinched, allowing the boy to explore freely. Sarah watched with both gratitude and worry. "Tommy, we can't keep him," she murmured, already calculating their strained budget. "We can barely afford our own needs, and a dog requires food, vet visits." Her words faded as she observed something extraordinary. Normally cautious in unfamiliar spaces, Tommy now walked with confidence, his small hand resting on Max's back. The dog instinctively matched his steps, guiding him with an innate sense of responsibility. "He helps me see, Mommy," Tommy explained, his face alight with joy. "He tells me when to step up or down, just like your voice does." Indeed, Max was gently nudging Tommy before every curb, pausing at intersections and placing himself protectively between the boy and approaching pedestrians. It was as though he had been trained for this very role. Mr. Peterson, the building manager, emerged from his office with a stern expression. "Mrs. Miller, that dog can't stay here. Our building has strict policies against pets, especially large breeds." His eyes scanned Max with suspicion, noting the scars and the slight limp. Besides, he could be dangerous. Just look at him. He's clearly been in fights. Tommy tightened his grip on Max's fur. "He's not dangerous," he protested, his unseeing eyes brimming with tears. "He saved me. He's my friend." Max, as if understanding, gently licked Tommy's hand while keeping a dignified stance. His calm and composed demeanor contradicted every assumption about his rough exterior. Sarah found herself torn. Her son's happiness was undeniable, yet the realities of their finances and housing restrictions loomed over her. "Tommy, sweetheart." She knelt beside him, her voice soft but firm. "I know you love him, but we have to think practically. Where would he sleep? How would we afford his food? He can share my room and my food." Tommy's voice trembled with emotion. "Please, Mom. He makes the darkness less scary." The raw honesty in his words struck Sarah deeply. She had spent years trying to help Tommy navigate his world without sight. And yet here was this stray dog doing it naturally, instinctively. Over the next few days, despite Sarah's hesitation, Max remained steadfast outside their building. He never caused trouble, never barked unnecessarily, and always disappeared whenever animal control arrived. Each morning, he was there to greet Tommy, and each evening, he watched them enter the building from a respectful distance. The turning point came during Tommy's piano lesson. Usually, Sarah had to leave work early to walk him to class, causing issues with her employer. But that Thursday, when she arrived late, she was shocked to find Tommy already at the music room, Max lying patiently outside the door. "He walked me here, Mom," Tommy exclaimed. "He knows the way. He stopped at all the right places and kept me safe from the construction on Madison Avenue." Even the music teacher who had witnessed the scene was astonished. The dog's awareness and care surpassed what she had seen in many trained service animals. Still, Sarah hesitated. "We just can't, Tommy," she repeated, though her resistance was weakening. "What if he gets sick? What if something happens?" Families turned away, seeing only a broken dog, not the hero he once was. When the overcrowded shelter placed him on the euthanasia list, fate intervened. On the stormy night before his scheduled end, Max escaped. For weeks he roamed Central Park, a silent guardian in the shadows. Despite his pain, his instincts remained. He protected lost children, barked to alert authorities of dangers, and even stole food only when he saw someone hungry. Park visitors whispered of a mysterious, scarred dog who appeared in times of need. Then came the night he heard Tommy's cry, and for the first time in years, Max found a purpose again. The morning after the storm, Max appeared outside Sarah and Tommy's apartment. His scarred face drew nervous glances from neighbors, but Tommy recognized him instantly. "Mom, it's my angel from the park!" Tommy exclaimed, reaching out. Max stepped forward, pressing his nose gently into Tommy's hand. A silent understanding passed between them. Two souls who had known struggle, who had been judged by the world, but who had also found each other. Sarah hesitated, thinking of the challenges ahead, but as she looked at Max, she saw something undeniable. This wasn't just a stray. This was a protector, a guardian, a piece of fate woven into their lives. And so, with Tommy beaming and Max resting his head against the boy's lap, Sarah made a decision that would change everything. Max had found a home, and in doing so, he had given them something they never expected: hope. Tommy's tiny fingers traced Max's face with remarkable gentleness, even running over his scars without hesitation. Max never flinched, allowing the boy to explore freely. Sarah watched with both gratitude and worry. "Tommy, we can't keep him," she murmured, already calculating their strained budget. "We can barely afford our own needs, and a dog requires food, vet visits." Her words faded as she observed something extraordinary. Normally cautious in unfamiliar spaces, Tommy now walked with confidence, his small hand resting on Max's back. The dog instinctively matched his steps, guiding him with an innate sense of responsibility. "He helps me see, Mommy," Tommy explained, his face alight with joy. "He tells me when to step up or down, just like your voice does." Indeed, Max was gently nudging Tommy before every curb, pausing at intersections and placing himself protectively between the boy and approaching pedestrians. It was as though he had been trained for this very role. Mr. Peterson, the building manager, emerged from his office with a stern expression. "Mrs. Miller, that dog can't stay here. Our building has strict policies against pets, especially large breeds." His eyes scanned Max with suspicion, noting the scars and the slight limp. "Besides, he could be dangerous. Just look at him. He's clearly been in fights." Tommy tightened his grip on Max's fur. "He's not dangerous," he protested, his unseeing eyes brimming with tears. "He saved me. He's my friend." Max, as if understanding, gently licked Tommy's hand while keeping a dignified stance. His calm and composed demeanor contradicted every assumption about his rough exterior. Sarah found herself torn. Her son's happiness was undeniable, yet the realities of their finances and housing restrictions loomed over her. "Tommy, sweetheart." She knelt beside him, her voice soft but firm. I know you love him, but we have to think practically. Where would he sleep? How would we afford his food? He can share my room and my food. Tommy's voice trembled with emotion. Please, Mom. He makes the darkness less scary. The raw honesty in his words struck Sarah deeply. She had spent years trying to help Tommy navigate his world without sight. And yet here was this stray dog doing it naturally, instinctively. Over the next few days, despite Sarah's hesitation, Max remained steadfast outside their building. He never caused trouble, never barked unnecessarily, and always disappeared whenever animal control arrived. Each morning, he was there to greet Tommy, and each evening, he watched them enter the building from a respectful distance. The turning point came during Tommy's piano lesson. Usually, Sarah had to leave work early to walk him to class, causing issues with her employer. But that Thursday, when she arrived late, she was shocked to find Tommy already at the music room, Max lying patiently outside the door. He walked me here, Mom, Tommy exclaimed. He knows the way. He stopped at all the right places and kept me safe from the construction on Madison Avenue. Even the music teacher who had witnessed the scene was astonished. The dog's awareness and care surpassed what she had seen in many trained service animals. Still, Sarah hesitated. We just can't, Tommy, she repeated, though her resistance was weakening. What if he gets sick? What if something happens? But Max's behavior never faltered. He was calm around other children, showed no aggression toward other dogs, and demonstrated an uncanny understanding of Tommy's needs. One evening, Sarah overheard Tommy whispering to Max through the front door. I know Mom's scared, he confided. Ever since Dad died, she's scared of losing things. But I'm not scared when you're here. You make the world bigger for me. Max whined softly in response, his understanding so profound that Sarah felt tears well in her eyes. That night, as she watched her son sleep peacefully, she made her decision. They would find a way to make it work, whatever it took. Love and healing sometimes arrived in unexpected forms, and for them, it had come in the shape of a scarred, limping dog who had found his way to their doorstep. Tommy's body tensed as he instinctively attuned himself to his companion's signals. Before he could ask what was wrong, the hushed silence was shattered by the sliding door of a van. Two men stepped out, their footsteps swift and purposeful on the sidewalk. Hey there. Tommy, one of them called, his voice falsely friendly. Your grandfather sent us to pick you up. Richard Miller wants to surprise your mom. He reached for Tommy's arm, but Max reacted instantly, inserting himself between Tommy and the stranger. A deep, menacing growl rumbled from the dog's throat. Tommy backed away, his fingers clutching tightly onto Max's fur. My grandfather doesn't send strangers, he said, his voice shaking yet firm. Max, sensing the threat, moved with precision. His training took over as he backed Tommy against a building wall, ensuring no one could approach from behind. The men quickly dropped their act. Grab the kid, the first man ordered. The boss wants the dog unharmed. As they advanced, Max sprang into action. His powerful jaws clamped onto the first attacker's arm, drawing blood and a howl of pain. The second man pulled out a taser, but Max was faster, knocking the weapon away with a precise strike. Years of police training were evident in his swift, calculated movements. Then, he began barking, not just a defensive growl, but a distinct pattern of sharp, loud barks that echoed through the street. From her second-floor balcony, Mrs. Anderson, who had been watering her plants, heard the commotion. Recognizing Tommy and seeing the struggle, she immediately grabbed her phone. Someone's trying to kidnap the blind Miller boy, she shouted into the receiver. Corner of Maple and 4th. The first attacker, clutching his bleeding arm, stumbled backward toward the van. Forget the kid. Just grab the dog. But Max stood his ground, pressing protectively against Tommy's legs. His scarred face was fierce with determination. Every time the men tried to circle around, he would lunge and snap, keeping them at bay. Tommy, though terrified, remained calm, trusting Max completely. He could hear the men's frustrated cursing, the approaching wail of sirens, and Max's continuous warning growls. The dog's fur beneath his fingers was rigid with tension, yet his presence was steady and reassuring. Alerted by Mrs. Anderson's frantic call, Sarah arrived just as police cars screeched around the corner. The would-be kidnappers bolted for the van, but one of them shouted back, "This isn't over. That dog is worth more than you know." The police gave chase while Sarah ran to Tommy, wrapping him in her arms. "Are you hurt? Did they touch you?" she asked, her voice shaking. Tommy shook his head, still clutching Max's fur. "Max protected me, Mom." He knew they were lying about Grandpa. Officer Jenkins, taking their statements, observed Max carefully. "This wasn't random," he noted. "That dog's responses were tactical, military or police trained, and those men seemed more interested in him than in the boy." As they walked the final blocks home, escorted by police, Sarah noticed how Max continued scanning their surroundings, his body tense and alert. Even after they reached their apartment, he positioned himself by the door, watching, waiting, prepared for any threat. That night, after Tommy had finally fallen asleep, Sarah found Max still awake, his eyes fixed on the bedroom door. She sat beside him, wrapping her arms around his scarred neck. "You saved him," she whispered, tears falling into his fur. "You saved my baby." Max leaned into her embrace, but his vigilant posture never relaxed. The custody battle begins. The attempted kidnapping became a turning point. It was no longer just about keeping a beloved pet. It was about protecting a family member willing to risk his life for them. But somewhere out there, someone was willing to go to dangerous lengths to take Max away. 2 days after the attack, Sarah received a hand-delivered letter from Preston Associates, the Millers' high-powered law firm. The message was clear. They were suing for emergency custody of Tommy, citing Sarah's reckless endangerment of their grandson. "You brought a dangerous stray into your home," Richard Miller thundered when they confronted her in the building's lobby. "Tommy could have been killed because of your irresponsible decisions." Beside him, Elizabeth clutched her designer handbag like a shield. "We've been patient, Sarah, but this is the final straw. Tommy needs proper protection, not some unpredictable street animal." The initial court hearing was set for the following week. James Preston, the Miller's lawyer, built a damning case. A single mother working multiple jobs, living in an unsafe neighborhood, now harboring a potentially dangerous dog. "Your Honor," Preston argued, "Ms. Miller's judgment is questionable, at best. She is placing her emotional attachment to a stray animal above her son's safety." Sarah's court-appointed lawyer seemed overwhelmed. The Millers presented testimonies from neighbors about Max's aggressive behavior, carefully edited security footage of him growling at strangers, and expert opinions warning about the risks of keeping retired police dogs as pets. The fact that Max had protected Tommy was twisted into proof of his violent tendencies. "Consider the pattern," Preston continued. "First, Mrs. Miller refuses help from Tommy's grandparents. Then, she endangers him by keeping an untrained attack dog. Now, criminals are targeting the child. The Millers can provide round-the-clock security, private tutors, and the best medical care available. The worst blow came when Child Protective Services conducted an unannounced inspection. Though Sarah's apartment was spotless, their report noted, while the dog appears well-behaved, the potential risk to a vulnerable child cannot be ignored. Tommy, required to speak with a court-appointed psychologist, desperately defended his mother and Max. "They're trying to take me away from my family," he sobbed. "Max isn't dangerous. He's my best friend. My eyes. Please don't let them separate us." Though the psychologist noted Tommy's deep attachment to both Sarah and Max, the Millers' lawyers argued that this emotional dependency was unhealthy. The custody battle took a toll on Sarah's already strained finances. Her savings dwindled as she tried to hire a better lawyer. She started missing more work for court appearances and social worker meetings. Sensing her vulnerability, the Millers made an offer. They would drop the custody suit if Sarah voluntarily sent Tommy to a boarding school for the blind, without Max. "Think about Tommy's future," Elizabeth urged during a mediation session. "Our grandson deserves the best education, the best opportunities. You can visit him on holidays." The suggestion of such limited access to her son made Sarah physically ill. But the mounting legal pressure was becoming unbearable. Their only ally in the family, Michael's younger sister Rachel, finally spoke up. "This is wrong," she told her parents. "Michael would never want Tommy taken from Sarah. He chose her as his wife, as Tommy's mother, despite your disapproval. Are you really honoring his memory by trying to destroy the family he loved?" The Millers responded by cutting Rachel out of their will. Their determination to gain custody only intensified. They hired private investigators to scrutinize Sarah's every move, searching for any misstep they could use against her. Through it all, Max remained a steady presence. His protective instincts heightened with each passing day. At night, Sarah would find him in Tommy's room, the boy sleeping peacefully with his hand in Max's fur, while the dog maintained his silent watch. The battle was far from over, but Sarah knew one thing: as long as Max was with them, they still had a fighting chance. "Abroad," Rachel interjected. "James came to me after spotting Max in the park with Tommy. He was aware of Michael's death in the warehouse fire. He was there that day." Her voice softened. James was the officer leading the rescue operation. The weight of her words struck Sarah like a physical blow. Wilson's face mirrored her anguish. "Max and I were both there when Michael entered the building for the last time. Your husband saved 3 lives that day, but before we could reach him, the building collapsed. Max tried to go in after him. That's how he got some of those scars." Sarah sank into a chair, overwhelmed by the tangled connections between them. Max moved to her side, resting his head on her knee, and for the first time she noticed Wilson's gaze, filled with both pride and sorrow. "After the fire, I was injured, and Max was deeply traumatized," Wilson continued. "The department wanted to retire him, but I knew he just needed time to recover. Then my wife, pregnant and fearful of his scars, gave him away while I was in the hospital. By the time I was well enough to look for him, he had already escaped from the shelter." Rachel slid a thick folder across the table. "James has been working undercover, gathering evidence against the trafficking ring. But this goes beyond stolen dogs." She hesitated, exchanging a glance with Wilson. "Tell her what you found out." "About Richard Miller's involvement." Wilson's expression darkened. "Your father-in-law's investment firm has unknowingly been funneling funds into the trafficking operation through a web of shell companies. When we followed the money, we uncovered something even worse. The custody battle isn't just about—" "Tommy." Sarah's instincts sharpened. "What are you saying?" "Richard Miller identified Max as a former police dog," Wilson explained. "He's been collaborating with the traffickers, promising them Max once he gains custody of Tommy. The kidnapping attempt wasn't random. It was staged to portray you as an unfit mother. Everything fell into place. The suspicious accidents, the relentless surveillance, the perfectly timed legal battle." "But why?" Sarah demanded. "Why would Richard do this to his own grandson?" Rachel's voice was laced with contempt. "Money. The trafficking ring offered millions for Max due to his specialized training. Richard saw an opportunity to secure Tommy and forge a lucrative partnership. He probably convinced himself it was for the greater good." Wilson pulled out his badge, but it wasn't a local police badge. It was federal. "We've been building a case against the trafficking ring for months. Max is crucial to dismantling the entire operation, but we needed to keep him safe without tipping our hand. That's why I stayed in the shadows, watching over your family." Sarah thought back to all the times she had sensed an unseen presence, an invisible guardian. The night of the kidnapping attempt, Those sirens weren't just coincidence, were they? Wilson shook his head. We had a team monitoring you. When Max began his alert barking, a specific emergency signal we trained him to use, we acted immediately. He executed his training flawlessly. Pride colored his voice as he regarded his former partner. So what do we do now? Sarah asked, her fingers threading through Max's fur. How do we protect Tommy and Max from both the traffickers and Richard? Wilson leaned in, his tone grave. We're ready to move on the trafficking ring, but we need your help. Richard Miller doesn't know I'm involved or that a federal case is in motion. If we play this right, we can safeguard your family and take down the operation. But it requires taking a risk. Rachel nodded. It means using the custody hearing to expose everything. The trafficking, Richard's involvement, all of it. Are you willing to do that? Sarah looked at Max, who had positioned himself beside Tommy's empty chair. Still guarding, still devoted. She thought of her son's love for the dog who had become his guide, his protector, his best friend. She thought of Michael, who had given his life for others, and how Max carried the same unwavering spirit of sacrifice. Her resolve solidified. Tell me what you need me to do, she said firmly. It's time we fought back. After the failed kidnapping, the traffickers' threats escalated. Each morning, Sarah found dead flowers on her doorstep, a chilling message that they were being watched. Anonymous text messages flooded her phone, each containing photographs. Tommy at school, Max during their walks, even Sarah at her new diner job. Every image carried the same ominous warning. Time is running out. The organization grew bolder, moving beyond intimidation. One morning, Sarah discovered that Max's food had been tampered with. Wilson's tests confirmed traces of sedatives. They had to keep Tommy and Max indoors at night, when strange vehicles began circling their neighborhood. The security cameras in their building conveniently malfunctioned, always during attempts to breach their apartment. They're getting desperate, Wilson explained in a tense meeting at Rachel's apartment. Our investigation is closing in, and they know it. Max is their most valuable target, a highly trained police dog worth millions in the illegal market. He spread out surveillance, photos of Richard Miller in secret meetings with known traffickers. Your father-in-law promised them Max through legal means, but the organization is losing patience. Sarah's job at the diner turned into a nightmare. Strange men lingered for hours, ordering nothing but coffee, their eyes tracking her every move. Her manager found threatening notes demanding details about her schedule. One night, as she locked up, she found her car's 4 tires slashed. The message was clear. They could reach her anywhere. Even Tommy's school wasn't safe. A new teaching assistant took a particular interest in Max. Wilson's background check revealed her connection to known traffickers. When Sarah raised concerns, the administration dismissed her worries. We can't investigate every employee based on a parent's paranoia, the principal scoffed. Rachel uncovered the terrifying extent of the operation. They have people in law enforcement, private security, even animal control. They're building a legal and illegal trap around you. Multiple false complaints were filed against Max, one creating a paper trail that supported his removal. The worst incident happened during one of Tommy's piano lessons. 2 men, disguised as animal control officers, attempted to seize Max, claiming they had orders concerning a dangerous animal. Only Miss Reynolds's quick thinking, recognizing them from Wilson's warning photos, stopped them. She pulled the fire alarm, creating enough chaos for Sarah to escape with Tommy and Max. Their apartment was no longer safe. Strange noises in the night became constant, scratching at windows, jiggling locks, footsteps in the hallway. Max barely rested, maintaining a vigilant watch. His training resurfaced. He systematically checked entry points, responding to every unfamiliar sound with precision. The community turned against Sarah. Parents at Tommy's school started a petition to ban Max, citing fabricated safety concerns. Local news ran sensationalized headlines. Dangerous dog near. School. Parents alarmed. Social media swarmed with false allegations about Max's aggression. Even the church that once supported Sarah suddenly had no space for Tommy in their programs. The custody battle took a cruel turn. Richard Miller's lawyers built a damning case, painting Sarah as an unstable mother. The judge, influenced by public pressure, ruled that Tommy would spend weekends at his grandparents' estate, a clear step toward full custody reversal. As Sarah watched her support system crumble, one thing became certain. She had to fight back before she lost everything. Tommy and his mother, Sarah, faced an invisible wall of hostility. Friends who once stood by them now avoided eye contact in the hallways. Tommy's doctor suddenly had no available appointments, and his piano teacher, Mrs. Reynolds, was pressured into canceling his lessons after receiving threatening calls. Despite everything, Tommy remained remarkably resilient, though the strain was evident. One night, curled up with Max on his bed, he asked, "Mom, why do they hate us? We haven't done anything wrong." Sarah had no answer that could fully explain the cruelty of adults to a child who only wanted to keep his best friend. The final community meeting was the most painful. Sarah stood before her neighbors, trying to explain how crucial Max was to Tommy's independence and safety. But their minds were already made up. The building manager delivered an ultimatum. Either Max had to go, or they would be evicted. Looking at the hostile faces surrounding her, Sarah realized these people weren't interested in the truth. They had chosen their side in a battle they didn't even understand. The kidnapping happened during one of the court-mandated weekend visits to the Miller estate. Though Sarah had fought against these visits, the judge's order was clear. That Saturday morning, as she watched the Miller's luxury car drive away with Tommy inside, Max's distressed whining should have been her first warning. The call came at midnight. A cold voice announced, "We have your son. If you want to see him again, bring the dog to Highland Park. Come alone." Sarah's world collapsed as she heard Tommy's frightened voice in the background. "Mom, I'm scared. They said they'll hurt Max if you call the police." The Miller's security team claimed Tommy had disappeared from his bedroom while everyone slept. Richard Miller played the role of the distraught grandfather convincingly, but Sarah noticed he wouldn't meet her eyes. Elizabeth Miller fainted, dramatically when the police arrived, drawing attention and sympathy while providing the perfect distraction. Wilson, monitoring the situation, quickly pieced together what had happened. "It's an inside job," he reported grimly. The kidnappers knew exactly when Tommy would be at the estate. They knew the security codes. They knew which window had a faulty alarm. This was orchestrated by someone with intimate knowledge of the Miller's home. Max's behavior changed the moment they arrived at the mansion. He moved methodically through Tommy's room, tracking scents, his police training evident in every motion. He led them to a service entrance where security cameras had mysteriously malfunctioned. Outside, he found Tommy's bracelet, the one Sarah had given him with a tiny GPS tracker hidden inside. The next call from the kidnappers revealed their true plan. "Your father-in-law made a deal," the voice explained with chilling detachment. "The boy for the dog. A simple trade. Mr. Miller gets custody, we get the dog. Everyone wins, except you." The laugh that followed sent ice through Sarah's veins. Racing against time, Sarah and Wilson followed Max as he tracked Tommy's scent through the darkened streets. The dog moved with singular purpose, ignoring distractions, focused entirely on finding his boy. His search and rescue training became evident as he led them through a maze of abandoned warehouses. The trail ended in the industrial district, where empty buildings loomed like shadows against the night sky. Max's behavior became more urgent, his tracking more intense. They found signs of Tommy's presence, a shoe print here, a disturbed patch of dust there. The kidnappers had moved quickly, but they hadn't been careful enough to evade a trained police dog. Sarah's heart nearly stopped when they heard Tommy's cry echo through the empty streets. Max froze, ears forward, every muscle tense. Won't tell you anything about Max. Tommy's voice rang out, frightened but defiant. You're bad people. The kidnappers had chosen their hideout carefully. An abandoned textile factory with multiple exits and clear sight lines. Wilson spotted at least 4 armed men patrolling the perimeter. Through a dirty window, they saw Tommy tied to a chair, surrounded by men in expensive suits who looked more like corporate executives than criminals. Richard Miller's luxury car was parked behind the building, confirming his involvement. Sarah heard his voice through a broken window, discussing terms with someone. Once we have custody, the dog is yours. My lawyers have already prepared the papers showing Sarah abandoned both Tommy and the animal. The full scope of the kidnappers' plan became clear. More vehicles arrived. Sleek black SUVs with tinted windows. Men in tactical gear unloaded equipment, preparing for what they assumed would be a simple exchange. They had planned for every contingency except one. They had underestimated the bond between a boy, his mother, and a dog willing to die to protect them. Despite his fear, Tommy remained defiant. Sarah could hear him refusing to reveal details about Max's training, even as his grandfather demanded answers. "He's not just a dog," Tommy shouted. "He's my best friend, and you're trying to hurt him." Max's training and instincts merged as he assessed the situation. His behavior shifted from tracking to tactical evaluation. He moved silently through the shadows, identifying entry points and threats. Sarah realized Max wasn't just finding Tommy. He was planning a rescue. Max's rescue operation began with precision. While Wilson called for backup, the dog created a diversion, knocking over metal barrels on the opposite side of the building. As guards rushed to investigate, Max led Sarah to a broken window near Tommy's location. The first phase of the rescue went perfectly. Max slipped inside, moving like a shadow through the darkness. The kidnappers, distracted by the commotion outside, were unaware of the danger approaching them. Then everything changed. One of the guards spotted movement. The dog's "Here!" he shouted, raising his weapon. Max didn't hesitate. He launched himself at the armed man, knocking the weapon away. The force of his attack sent both crashing into a stack of old machinery, metal pieces clattering to the floor. Richard Miller's true colors emerged in the chaos. "Don't damage the dog!" he shouted. "He's worth millions intact!" But his concern for Max didn't extend to his grandson's terror or his daughter-in-law's anguish. He tried to grab Tommy, intending to use him as leverage, but Max was faster. The dog took a brutal hit when he jumped between Tommy and a falling metal beam. The impact was sickening, but Max didn't even whimper. Blood matted his fur, yet he maintained his protective stance, positioning himself between Tommy and every threat in the room. Then Miller pulled out a concealed weapon. "Enough!" he shouted, aiming at Sarah. Max reacted instantly. He leapt, taking the bullet meant for her. The impact sent him crashing against the wall. Even then, he struggled to his feet, placing himself between his family and their enemies. Tommy, hearing Max's pained breathing, began to cry. "Max, please don't die, please!" The boy's distress seemed to give the injured dog new strength. Though he bled heavily, Max remained on guard, growling at anyone who dared approach. The police stormed the building moments later, catching the kidnappers off guard. But Max didn't relax. Only when Wilson approached did the dog allow himself to collapse. Sarah watched in horror as Max's fur turned red with blood. His breathing was labored, but his eyes never left Tommy. Even as emergency responders worked to save him, Max tried to crawl toward the boy, determined to protect him until the very end. Max's fever raged dangerously high, his once powerful body now weakened by trauma and relentless infection. The veterinary team fought tirelessly, racing against time to save the valiant dog who had sacrificed everything to protect his family. One stormy evening, Dr. Martinez, the lead veterinarian, delivered devastating news to Sarah and Tommy. "The next 24 hours are critical," she said gently. "The infection has spread, and his body is too weak to fight it effectively. We're doing everything possible, but you should prepare yourselves." Tommy sat beside Max's bed, his small hands clutching the dog's uninjured paw. "Please don't leave us," he whispered. Seeing Max, once so strong and proud, reduced to a motionless figure connected to tubes and monitors, shattered Sarah's heart. His scarred face was partially concealed by an oxygen mask, his body unnaturally still. Yet, even in his fragile state, his eyes never left Tommy, remaining ever watchful over the boy he had vowed to protect. The nights were the hardest. Tommy refused to leave, insisting on sleeping in a chair beside Max, his hand never straying from the dog's fur. Sarah watched as her son spoke softly to Max, weaving stories about their future, making promises of parks they would visit and games they would play. Even at the height of his fever, Max's tail would thump weakly at the sound of Tommy's voice. On the third night, Max's condition deteriorated. His breathing turned labored, his heart rate plummeting dangerously. The emergency team rushed in, working frantically to stabilize him as Sarah held Tommy in the hallway, both listening to the urgent voices and relentless beeping of the machines. "Fight, Max," Tommy cried. "Remember your promise to protect me." Hours later, Dr. Martinez emerged, exhaustion etched into her features. "He's stable for now," she said, "but his condition remains critical. The next few hours will determine whether he has the strength to recover." She hesitated, then added softly, "In all my years, I've never seen a dog fight so fiercely to stay alive. He's not doing it for himself. He's doing it for you." Wilson visited daily, drawing on his experience with injured canine officers to aid in Max's recovery. He sat beside his former partner, speaking of past cases, reminding Max of his strength and training. "You've got a new mission now, buddy," he murmured, his voice thick with emotion. "That boy needs you. Stay strong." On the fifth day, the infection finally broke, but Max remained frail. The toll on his body was severe, and the veterinarians feared permanent damage to his leg. Yet, despite his struggle, his protective instincts never wavered. One night, as Tommy trembled from a nightmare, Max, despite his pain, lifted his head and let out a soft whine, comforting the boy who meant everything to him. Sarah spent every spare moment between shifts at the veterinary hospital, witnessing the unshakable bond between her son and his guardian. She saw how Max fought against sedation just to stay alert whenever Tommy was near. His determination to survive was matched only by Tommy's unwavering faith in his recovery. Days stretched into weeks, Max's progress uncertain. Each small improvement was a victory. Each setback met with renewed determination. The veterinary staff began calling him the miracle dog, astounded by his sheer will to live. Even in his weakest moments, his eyes never left Tommy, as if his very survival depended on the boy's presence. While Max battled for his life, Sarah received the news she had feared most. An emergency custody hearing had been called. Despite Richard Miller's arrest, Elizabeth Miller's lawyers had filed for immediate temporary custody, arguing that Sarah's financial struggles, worsened by Max's medical expenses, rendered her unfit to care for Tommy. The truth was undeniable. The medical bills were insurmountable. Each day brought fresh expenses, specialized antibiotics, multiple surgeries, round-the-clock care. Sarah's savings were gone, her credit cards maxed out. The veterinary hospital, though compassionate, hinted at transferring Max to a less costly facility, one lacking the specialized care he desperately needed. Then came Elizabeth Miller's offer. Through her lawyer, she proposed a deal. She would cover all of Max's medical expenses, but only if Sarah voluntarily relinquished custody of Tommy. "Your son needs stability," the lawyer argued. "Mrs. Miller can provide the best care for both Tommy and Max. You need to consider what's truly best for them." Pressure mounted as Sarah's landlord issued an eviction notice. With no savings and a wrecked credit score, finding a new home felt impossible. Child Services flagged their impending homelessness as a critical concern, further weakening her custody case. Tommy, sensing his mother's distress, tried to be brave. "We can live somewhere smaller, Mommy," he said one night, resting his hand on Max's sleeping form. "I don't need toys or new clothes, I just need you and Max." His words, meant to comfort, only deepened Sarah's agony. The custody evaluator's report was crushing. It outlined Sarah's financial instability, the trauma Tommy had endured, and ongoing security concerns. Though it acknowledged the deep love between Tommy, Sarah, and Max, it concluded that Elizabeth Miller's wealth and resources might better serve Tommy's needs. Sarah's lawyer, overwhelmed by the Millers' legal power, suggested a compromise: shared custody, with Tommy primarily living with his grandmother, but having scheduled visits with Sarah and Max. "This may be the best deal we can get," he warned grimly. "Otherwise, you risk losing everything." The night before the hearing, Sarah sat in Max's hospital room, watching Tommy sleep beside the dog's bed. Max, despite his weakness, kept his eyes on the boy, his protective instincts undiminished. Seeing them together, her brave, blind son and his loyal guardian, made the decision unbearable. Elizabeth Miller made one last attempt to sway Sarah, appearing at the hospital unexpectedly. "Be reasonable," she urged, her voice soft but firm. "Tommy needs more than love. He needs stability, security. I can give him everything you can't, and Max will receive the best veterinary care money can buy." The custody hearing loomed like a storm on the horizon, but Sarah's troubles didn't end there. The veterinary hospital demanded payment for Max's continued treatment. Tommy's special education program required tuition Sarah couldn't afford. Her job, already strained by absences for court and hospital visits, teetered on the brink of termination. Each night, Sarah held Tommy as he cried himself to sleep beside Max's hospital bed, promising they would stay together. But in the quiet hours, as she watched Max fight for his life and Tommy's future hang in the balance, she wondered if love alone was enough to withstand the crushing weight of reality. Everyone in Sarah's life, from the kind-hearted shopkeeper who warned her about suspicious customers to the sympathetic nurse at the veterinary hospital, had unknowingly been part of David's undercover team, assigned to protect her family while gathering crucial evidence. As Detective Anderson, David had also been investigating the warehouse fire that had claimed Michael's life, suspecting it was linked to the trafficking ring. His dedication stemmed partly from guilt. He had trained Max for police work and felt responsible for the dog's well-being. Watching Max become Tommy's guardian had brought his mission full circle. As Detective Anderson's investigation became public, the truth about Sarah's struggles surfaced like waves crashing against the shore. The same local newspapers that once vilified her now ran exposés uncovering Robert Miller's trafficking operation and the systematic harassment campaign against her family. Security footage revealed paid actors staging incidents with Max, while leaked emails exposed coordinated efforts to turn the community against them. Neighbors who had shunned Sarah were horrified to learn how they had been manipulated. Mrs. Chin, their elderly neighbor, broke down in tears when she discovered that the concerned citizens who had warned her about Max were in fact Robert's hired intimidators. The building manager, confronted with undeniable evidence that he had been bribed to push for their eviction, stood before the tenants in an emergency meeting and publicly apologized to Sarah. Tommy's school faced its own reckoning. Records proved that Robert Miller had made generous donations to influence the staff against Sarah. The principal, overwhelmed with shame for his role in the harassment, organized a special assembly to formally welcome Tommy and Max back. Teachers who had once criticized Sarah now acknowledged how Max's presence had significantly improved Tommy's independence and learning. The PTA members, who had led the charge against Max, were mortified to realize they had been pawns in Robert's scheme. Jennifer Watson, the most vocal in her opposition, arrived at Sarah's door in tears, clutching a handwritten apology. She had finally seen the truth. Every report of Max's aggression had been fabricated. Local businesses that had once turned them away now embraced them. Stores displayed "Welcome Max" signs in their windows, and the diner where Sarah worked hosted a fundraiser for Max's medical bills. Even the ice cream shop, which had previously banned them, replaced its "No Dogs Allowed" sign with a picture of Max and Tommy, labeled "Our Local Heroes." The church congregation, once divided in their judgment of Sarah, now united to support her family. The humbled pastor led a special prayer service for Max's recovery. Congregants who had once quoted scripture against her now spoke of divine intervention, marveling at how Max had been placed in Tommy's life to protect him. Members took turns bringing meals to the veterinary hospital and sitting with Tommy. While Sarah worked, even the veterinary hospital staff underwent a transformation. The administrators, learning how Robert had pressured them into withdrawing Max's care, established a special fund to cover the remainder of his treatment costs. The hospital director personally apologized to Sarah, admitting their failure to properly investigate the false complaints regarding payment issues. Perhaps the most heartwarming response came from Tommy's classmates and their parents. The children who had once avoided Tommy now eagerly asked for play dates, while parents who had crossed the street to ignore them now offered their full support. Tommy's painful isolation began to fade as his peers finally understood the truth about his extraordinary bond with Max. The path to redemption took an unexpected turn when Elizabeth Miller arrived at the veterinary hospital. With Robert behind bars and Richard imprisoned, the woman who had fought so hard to take Tommy away now stood before them, her usually composed demeanor cracking with remorse. "I was so wrong," she whispered, watching Tommy sleep beside Max's bed. "I thought I was protecting him, but I was only protecting my own pride." The outpouring of community support materialized in many ways. The apartment residents created a rotation schedule to help with Tommy's care while Sarah worked. Mrs. Chin prepared home-cooked meals. Mr. Peterson from the flooring company drove Tommy to therapy, and the Rodriguez family helped with his schoolwork. The building manager not only canceled their eviction, but also renovated their apartment to make it more accessible for Tommy and Max. Tommy's school underwent a remarkable transformation as well. The principal implemented a service, dog awareness program, using Max's story to teach students about disability rights and animal assistance. Tommy's classmates, once distant, became his fiercest advocates, forming a buddy system to help him navigate school, with Max proudly leading their little group. Local businesses continued to step up. The diner adjusted Sarah's work schedule. To better accommodate Tommy's needs, the grocery store began delivering their food at no charge, and anonymous donors covered much of Max's ongoing medical expenses. Elizabeth Miller's change of heart proved genuine. She withdrew all legal claims to Tommy's custody and instead used her resources to support Sarah. She established a trust fund for Tommy's education and medical needs, this time without conditions. "Michael would have wanted this," she admitted, finally acknowledging her late son's wishes. The most touching gesture came from Tommy's classmates' parents. While Sarah and Tommy spent a weekend at the veterinary hospital with Max, the community banded together to renovate their apartment. They installed adaptive technology for Tommy's independence, created a comfortable recovery space for Max, and furnished the entire home. The project united former adversaries, working side by side to right their wrongs. Rachel, in collaboration with Detective Anderson, established a support foundation for families with service animals, using the restitution money from the Millers. The foundation would ensure that no other family faced the same struggles Sarah had endured, offering legal aid, medical care for service animals, and community education. The impact of their journey extended far beyond their town. Local media, once eager to vilify them, now championed their cause, raising awareness about service animals and disability rights. The town council even passed new regulations, known as Max's Law, to protect service animals and their families. Max's recovery became a symbol of resilience. Weeks of intensive care and rehabilitation paid off as the brave dog took his first steps, drawing cheers from the veterinary staff. Though he would always carry a slight limp as a badge of his courage, his fighting spirit never wavered. At the official adoption ceremony in the town square, Detective Anderson, now publicly acknowledged as Max's former handler, transferred Max's service dog certification to Sarah. "This isn't just an adoption," he declared, his voice thick with emotion. "This is recognizing what has always been true.